Hello, my name's John Ferrara. I'm the CEO of Nimble, and I'm super excited to be here today with the PieSync team. Sarah and Franz are dear friends. We've done a number of different inspiration education webinars, and we thought it'd be a good time to come back and do another one because both platforms have evolved, and I think that people underestimate the amount of contacts that they might have personally and professionally, and where these contacts are stored and the value of unifying them into a singular place. I really believe relationships are critical to life success, and that if you don't manage contacts and relationships effectively, then you're really missing out on a golden opportunity, so to speak. And so with that, let's get to know Sarah. Sarah is all things partner and also product. Sarah, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. So here I am from lovely Belgium.
Yeah. Do you guys have mountains in Belgium?
We have hills. We have a
Yeah.
little bit of hills in the south of Belgium, yes.
Yes. Because I'm looking at your background that you love to ski and hike, so I guess you have to go to places where there's mountains to do that.
Yeah, we have to travel to other countries for that.
Yeah, I'm an added backpacker myself. I'm going to the Sierras to do some backpacking.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, that's fun. So, Franz, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
You know, Franz, I love that that you're really all about the product and teaching people how to be better with it. And I love how you do storytelling around the product. If you guys want to learn more about how to use PieSync, Franz has an incredible post on the blog that walk through a lot of the details that you may want to learn more about here. And Franz, what kind of guitar do you play?
Mostly singer, songwritery, acoustic things. Yeah.
My sons during COVID have upgraded their guitars to Telecaster, no, a Strat. My son has a 60s Fender Strat, and my other son has an SG and plus acoustic. So we have a lot of fun with music here. And then with that, let's, for those that don't know me, my name is John Ferrer. I'm the CEO of Nimble. I'm all about contacts and relationships. And, you know, I stumbled into doing this because I struggled to manage my relationships and my contacts. I couldn't find a tool to do it. I built Goldmine with a dear friend of mine, Alon Susser, and later built Nimble because I'm not done with it. I really believe that relationships are more critical than ever, and we all struggle to manage contacts. And that's why it's great to have PieSync here. Before I go further, please ask questions. Go into the Q&A box to do so. There's a little housekeeping. We do have Nimble webinars on a daily basis as well as weekly basis. And for those that, next slide, there it is. For those that want to learn more, go to nimble.com company webinars, and we have a variety of webinars there, plus recordings on YouTube. And with that, let's get rolling, Sarah. You've got the ball and the agenda, and I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, so thank you, John, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to be starting off with a little bit of explaining what PieSync does. Then Franz is going to take it away for a quick demo of how PieSync is set up. And then we can discuss some more about PieSync and see what questions we got from the audience. So let's have a look. So at PieSync, since 2012, we've been dealing with one problem exclusively: synchronization of contacts databases. And as resellers that implement software, you know there are existing services out there that offer connectors. Software can be linked. This is not new. We didn't invent water or anything like. But from the start, with PieSync, we wanted to offer something that was different, something that was like deeper into that connecting. And so while most connectors just sync only info in one way, one direction, we took up the challenge of wanting to offer bidirectional or two-way synchronization at an affordable price. So here's what PieSync sets out to solve. PieSync syncs your contacts and company data, and it does so two ways. Now, here in this screenshot of Dynamics 365 Sales Hub, but you can just as well consider any other CRM or any other business app that holds data, like we asked in the poll at the beginning. Dynamic does a lot of things, but at its core, it would contain contacts, accounts, and leads, just like Nimble would. Contacts, leads, accounts. That's information that just should not just sit siloed in Dynamics or in any other app. Even though you could claim a platform like Microsoft Dynamics should hold the single truth, or it should be the master database, you're using more than one single platform to run your business. That's why we had the questions at the beginning of this webinar. You know that this same contact data out of Dynamics will also lead another life in some other platform. You might be using Nimble alongside the suite of Microsoft products, or you may be using Mailchimp and that holds its proper database of subscriber contacts, or you're invoicing these same customers in an accounting app like Xero or Quickbooks, or you're running campaigns through Facebook lead ads. Where do they go? So many platforms that need to be interconnected. How do you do this in an intelligent way without the hassle of CSV imports and exports? So because you are using more than one SaaS app, Frans is going to show you what it can look like to sync these apps. He has picked a few of the popular apps. Just keep in mind that you don't have to be using these exact apps. You might be using a different accounting app than Xero, but you can just as well replace that with, for example, QuickBooks or FreshBooks. The principle of PieSync is the same no matter which apps you're selecting. So Frans, I'm gonna give you the presenter role.
Please.
So that you can share with us how you set up PieSync.
Right. I should be showing Nimble right now. Please confirm.
Yes, you are.
Cool.
Yes.
So yeah, it was an arbitrary selection, really. Well, arbitrary, and then again, we also looked at which apps are actually being used, right? PieSync and Nimble have been friends since quite a while, so we know which apps the Nimble audience is using. So it's kind of based on frequency as well. The way to activate PieSync, it sits in new networks and imports right inside of Nimble. PieSync also exists as a standalone app, but our partnership is really built on the fact that we actually make up a fairly large portion of technology that makes up this networks and imports screen. So as Sarah said, the way to look at PieSync is it's going to give you connectivity to other apps, to quite a lot of apps. And the way to simply consider PieSync already is, well, it's an import wizard, right? It helps you bring data that sits in another app into your Nimble environment. But it does more than just a simple import. Importing, you kind of think of a one-way operation bringing data in. We kind of do it in a different way. Well, for one, it's not CSV, right? It's going to guide you through a graphical user interface, a couple of easy steps as you select one of these apps that you may be using. By the way, if you're not finding the app that you need, reach out to us and we may actually be working on it already. But what PieSync will do is, and apologies for the low quality of this GIF. Hopefully it kind of makes it over all right. So what you're seeing here is two contact cards, a contact card of Brian Smith that may be sitting in Nimble, and on the right you have a contact card of, well, exactly the same Brian Smith that may be sitting in another app. Here it's Mailchimp. What PieSync will do is, well, a two-way sync. Two-way sync means it's not only just allowing you to move Brian into Mailchimp or take Brian's contact out of Mailchimp into Nimble. No, it does so on an, might I almost say, atomic level, right? Imagine Brian already sits in both apps, and that's actually fairly plausible, right? You got your data siloed. It will actually pick up on those subtle nuances of you having a phone number of Brian, a detected phone number or a detected job role, which Nimble is so good at, right? Nimble will detect a lot of information on those contacts. It will push it back into Mailchimp. And at the same time, Mailchimp has picked up on some data that you've been asking on a Mailchimp form, and it will merge that into Nimble. And that's actually a very subtle thing that really, if you try to accomplish this with a CSV, import and export, well, good luck. You're not going to manage it. It does this beautiful thing of like merging contact information. And I'll show you by means of examples of 4 apps. I've basically got them already connected right here. Again, arbitrary selection. I'm going to use Google Contacts here, but to be honest, if you're not using Google Contacts but Outlook people, hey, good for you. It's the exact same process. So how do you go about it in getting that line here? Well, it's really as simple as connecting a new contact source. I'm actually going to go in and jump to my existing connection here, which is going to show you 2 sync rules. And the way that I'm going to approach this demo and the different connections that I'll be showing, well, I'm always going to be looking at it from 2 angles. There is an angle where I am synchronizing contacts into Nimble, the contacts that I have to have sitting here in Google Contacts. And there's this notion of getting contacts out of, well, reading Nimble's data into Google. Google Contacts, well, how do these, you get contacts in here because you are working in Gmail, right? Or you're working in Outlook. These contacts can get into your Google Contacts in a number of ways. If you start emailing folks, they get in there. Of course, if you're using the smart contacts bar, they're going to get in there. But the data is constantly moving. It's constantly evolving. You're working on Frans Leijs's contacts data on your phone, because Google Contacts, as well as Outlook, as well as iCloud, really natively sync with your phone. You're making those changes in that Google Contacts environment, and it needs to sync into Nimble, just as the same way in the other way around. So that's really what PieSync's rule engine sets out to do, and it kind of visualizes those 2 movements. If a contact sits in Google, make sure it exists in Nimble. If a contact, whatever contact sits in Nimble, make sure that contact exists all the time in Google. It's as simple as that. It will do so by exchanging all of these fields, right? So we get the first, last name, all of the basic information that you get out of the rich contact schema. We figured out what contact schemas exist in all of those, in fact, 230 plus apps. So you don't have to go in and map out those different fields. They're all automatically mapped with one another. We can go ahead and add field mapping, but with Google Contacts, that may not yet be that relevant. It will be relevant when we get to synchronizing an app like Mailchimp. I'm actually noticing that this sync here, it is in fact running. So I can be looking at the activity, and I can be looking at the fact that, yep, already today it's been creating some contacts in Nimble. In fact, I've considered my Google Contacts today as an import, but already it's picked up on an update here. So this is Nimble figuring out an update on a contact on Nimble. Maybe it's doing some enrichment, and sure, lo and behold, that update then gets synced into my Google Contacts. So I have the most up-to-date contact record of my, well, in fact, colleague, Pico. That's the idea of a simple phone sync, right? A Google Contacts or Outlook or iCloud sync. That's fairly simple. I want to kind of bring to another level by visiting a Mailchimp sync, because this is really where we can visualize this idea of bringing the richness of Nimble, along with its segmentation, the management, the central position that Nimble may play inside of your stack, and how can we bring over that segmentation in Mailchimp? Mailchimp is a newsletter app, and you know what? If you're not using Mailchimp, you're using Constant Contact, or you're using Campaign Monitor or GetResponse. There's plenty of email marketing apps out there. They all work on the simple premise of you create a newsletter and it needs to go out to an audience. But that audience, and basically this audience clearly is a test audience, it only carries 2 contacts or a couple of contacts here. This really works like a Nimble database. It's a CRM. In fact, Mailchimp is pivoting towards becoming a CRM, but this is another silo database that makes it worthwhile being synced up with Nimble. And here's how you can go about in doing that. Again, looking at from two angles. I have contacts in Nimble that I actually do want them to receive the newsletter. So I can be choosing to sync people out of my Nimble into Mailchimp. It's not just a one-time thing here. I'm going to define a rule that's going to continuously make sure that contacts will be synced into Mailchimp. So I do this once, and then I'm essentially setting up a workflow that will run on the background here. I could, by simply tagging folks, and in fact, before this webinar started, I already made sure I tagged a couple of folks with the tag newsletter. I want to make sure that those people get into Mailchimp. And not only do they sync to Mailchimp, I'm going to just explicitly make sure that they are subscribed. And this rule is now being constructed as a two-way rule. So whoever currently sits in Mailchimp as a subscribed member, that's this rule here. It's an other way around rule. They will be added into Nimble, and they'll be getting that tag newsletter. There is also an undo toggle. If I take away the tag newsletter, I'm also taking them off of the newsletter. As simple as that. It's as if I'm almost remote controlling Mailchimp here. I'm going to scroll down here. You can see there's a couple of default options that we give you. If people were to unsubscribe themselves, you'll actually notice that. We'll make sure that they get a specific tag in Nimble. If a contact happened to already exist, like say Brian Smith here, right? He already exists, but he happens to have a conflicting phone number, right? Which information should we keep moving forward? Well, that's what this option is for. Really, it's only in the rare occasion of a conflict. The field mapping, well, with Mailchimp, as you can see, it's less, we get a little bit less fields than we got with Google Contacts, but this is where, because by default, by nature, Mailchimp doesn't really give you a lot of contact fields to begin with. You have to kind of set it up. According to the Mailchimp audience that you've got set up, you're going to be creating those fields yourself. You're going to be asking for a phone number, or you're not going to be asking for a phone number. It's kind of up to you. The field mapping essentially allows you to take information that you're capturing, like maybe you're asking a question on a Mailchimp form, and then you can go ahead and map that into a field. In fact, I did a bit of prep work here as well, where you should notice that I did set up some custom fields in my Nimble, excuse me, where I could be mapping that information accordingly. For instance, in Mailchimp, there is, I may be asking specifically for a mobile phone. So I'm creating a field for that, and then as I'm asking for that phone number, I can make sure that it gets synced into the right field. This is how field mapping works, and it just makes sure that the data will start syncing bidirectionally, two-way across those two platforms. Of course, it's not only about moving contacts into Mailchimp, it's also about getting the folks that are subscribing to forms and pulling them into your Nimble, and doing so in a smart way. It's not just moving them into your Nimble contacts database and then not really having any sort of breadcrumb or a trace. So in Mailchimp, there is ways to get tags. I mean, Mailchimp has plenty of ways to segment contacts. As of late, they kind of prefer tags as a means. Their workflow engine also revolves around tagging. So if people are filling out a certain form, you get them automatically tagged, or they land into a certain group, or essentially they fill out a certain question here. That will be the filter that I'm going to be setting up here. So imagine I'm getting a tag called John Spix automatically attached to certain folks filling out an interesting form. Not only do I want those contacts and only those contacts in Nimble, I can make sure that, well, in Nimble, they land with a certain tag, maybe John, or they could be given a certain, maybe up their rating, for instance, give them immediately a 5-star rating. It's essentially a workflow rule that will run in the background all the time. And if you think of this segmentation after the fact, that's fine. You can make these modifications on a running sync. These rules continuously run. They will be applied to all of the data that currently sits in your database. You declare how you want your Nimble database to behave alongside your Mailchimp database. Because tags in Nimble don't necessarily mean the same as tags in Mailchimp, right? So it's really up to you still to declare how you want those tags to be translated. If you too want to carry over the tags that you carry in Nimble, well, we give you the ability to set up a direct mapping. And yes, you can just map those tags directly into Mailchimp. That's fine. That will work as well. But we know that it's not always one-to-one, right? And that's why we give you a powerful rule engine where you can translate tags in Nimble to perhaps a group in Mailchimp or a custom property in Mailchimp. So rule engine is quite powerful. I'm actually gonna go ahead and start this thing because it wasn't yet running. As a sync runs, I'm also going to be noticing contacts that perhaps are not making it over. That's actually just the same way as a CSV won't always make it from make it over from the first go. Well, you'll find certain fields that don't get match up completely. You'll get actually an engine here that shows you why those are failing. So we visited Mailchimp, we visited Google Contacts. We actually found out there's quite a number of people using an app which holds tickets. Now, Zendesk is the most common app. It could be Intercom. It could be basically any app through which you are working on incoming communication. That because you have a website that runs some live chat. Basically, tickets, right? Tickets have to be worked on, and tickets don't just contain a problem mentioned by somebody, but they also contain a person. There's a customer behind a problem. That customer, you can visualize those people in this case in Zendesk. These people come with their own attributes, right? They come with a background. They come with tags. They come with user notes. That is information, again, that just makes sense to start linking with a rich contact engine like Nimble. Because think about it, if you take the information that sits in Nimble and you're gonna bring it to this contact pane here, right? As I'm a first line agent, or I'm working in Zendesk and I'm looking at this, if I can start relying on more information than just the information that got pushed into Zendesk by means of the ticket, that's going to help me in what's going to delight my customer in many more ways, right? The customer sends in an email, but he may not attach his phone number, his or her phone number. But if that contact happened to exist already in Nimble, the sync, PieSync, because it's a two-way sync, will in fact move that phone number into Zendesk, giving me the ability as an agent to actually pick up the phone and dial this person, surprise that person that, yeah, we actually do know all about you. We can carry over all of the information that Nimble detects and sort of enrich Zendesk. And the opposite is just as true. If you're using Zendesk, it's actually very likely that a lot of the new contacts that you'll be meeting, the new people that you'll be meeting, will inside of your funnel, they'll first land into Zendesk, right? So it's kind of imperative that these folks find their way into Nimble. Now, truth be told, we do recommend that Zendesk rule here, you kind of put some limits to it. Because we notice that there may be a lot of polluted contacts that may enter a Zendesk environment. So that's why a filter is really relevant here. One filter that we see a lot of users actually set up is, well, make sure that their email address is verified and that they're an actual end user, which is Zendesk's definition of being a customer, so that it's only once you actually start working on a ticket in Zendesk will they be eligible to be going into Nimble. And the opposite is true just as well, right? In Zendesk, I may have settings here. Here you can actually see the CRM portion of Zendesk's. Here's actually all of the customers that ever sent me a ticket. Now, you don't necessarily need all of the people that currently sit in Nimble to be going into Zendesk. Sarah mentioned we need to interconnect apps, and that's true, but we need to interconnect them in a smart way. So you don't need to connect basically anybody that sits in Nimble and send them into Zendesk. I would actually recommend setting up this rule. Only sync them if you actually found a match to begin with. We will match, by the way, on the email address. And I'm choosing here to sync persons. Good to know. We actually do also sync company data. And companies sit in Nimble just the same way that companies could sit in Zendesk. And there we don't match on email address. We will match on company name or domain name. So we'll do matching in a variety of ways. So this is another set of rules in a different environment, right? It's sort of transactional ticketing environment, making sure that if I'm in the first line, I can be working on tickets in a smarter way. I can also set up Zendesk or whatever app you happen to be using. You could be leveraging the workflows, the automated prioritization workflows in a better way, right? Because the contacts information that it's going to sit attached to these incoming tickets, well, it's going to be better. You're going to be knowing, well, which contacts are actually coming from a customer, which tickets are coming from a non-customer. In fact, in field mapping, it allows you to set up even synergies. Here's a funny thing that I've seen a couple of customers do that. Don't just sync Nimble to Mailchimp, but then they also sync Nimble to another app. So here's an option where it's basically a checkbox that I've set up myself in Zendesk. I'm registering whether or not somebody is subscribed to receiving the newsletter, right? So here's that checkbox, as you can see here, subscribe to newsletter. That checkbox that I'm controlling in Zendesk, I could literally have this remote control my Nimble with the tag newsletter. So if somebody in Zendesk sees that checkbox checked, I'm going to be giving the tag newsletter. And what this does is allowing me to actually remote control not only Nimble, but remote control Mailchimp. If you remember from the previous sync, this tag actually makes sure that people get the newsletter. So they're all interconnected, and there you have the word again. Finally, I want to round off with an app which is will be representing a very important part of your business. It's the app where you will be starting invoicing people or getting paid. It's also about doing your own payments. So I'm using an app called Xero. Probably I could have used QuickBooks in just the same way, right? You're using this for the same purpose. Again, it's about making sure that not all of the contacts that sit in Nimble find their way into your accounting system. But I would think it may be important that if their lead status reaches a proposal phase, well, you'll probably want those contacts to already be pushed into Xero. So when it push comes to shove and you actually want to start creating or drafting up a quote in Xero, all of that contact information sits there. You don't have to copy paste it over. It automatically sits there. Same time, in the opposite way, your accounting system will have some degree of segmentation. So groups is how Xero calls it. QuickBooks may call it otherwise. If you have segmentation that's being set up in one app, that's interesting. And it's interesting because you're actually creating a silo within a silo. And what PieSync will do is not only make sure that whatever contacts sit in here move into Nimble, it's also about making sure that the segmentation moves over, right? Because otherwise you're basically segmenting in Nimble, adding tags, like rating people, and you're not letting that information survive over in your other app. So through these rules, you can make sure that, well, a group called John's customers translates into, well, however you want to translate it into Nimble, because frankly, there's a number of ways that you can be using Nimble. You could be putting them in a tag. You could be applying a custom field. Really, this is where it kind of depends on how you are using Nimble, how you've felt most comfortable using Nimble. And that's why we've kind of built this rule engine from the beginning, right? We don't really like these templated recipes. It's about giving you guys the ability to control it yourself. The data that gets changed, to be perfectly honest, it's the contacts record, right? So invoices or the actual transactions in themselves, those will stay in Xero. PieSync is not an app that will sync those other records yet. We're working on that, but that's not yet what we're doing right now. Now, if somebody is actually a customer or a supplier, there's a degree of information that you can carry over, but it's about synchronizing the address book first and foremost. As I've visited these 4 apps, one theme that kind of followed us throughout is, well, the interface is always the same. So whether it is using any of these apps or any of the apps that we list here, the logic is always going to be the same. That concludes the demo portion of it. I think we'll go to questions after. First, I want to have Sarah talk a little bit more about pricing, and I'm gonna carry it back to Sarah.
I got it. I'll give it back to Sarah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you. So PieSync is available for all Nimble users for 2 weeks for free on an unlimited basis. After those 2 weeks, PieSync is still completely free if you choose to keep 2,000 contacts or less in sync. That's a plan that would otherwise set you back $49 US a month. So it's good to know that this is included for free with your Nimble subscription. And Frans has shown us really nicely where you can find it in Nimble to set up all those things. So if you want to rely on PieSync to bring over contacts on a one-time basis, so not doing the import with the CSV, and you got more than 2,000 contacts, say, for example, from an Infusionsoft database, where you maybe have 50,000 contacts. There's no limit there. You just fire up PieSync for that one-time import, and that's also included. There is going to be an extra cost if you need those more than 2,000 contacts to be constantly, continuously kept in sync. And our pricing page has this handler slider that you can see here that will show you what the pricing will be for your database syncing needs. Now, if you set up your account, you will see how many contacts PieSync is keeping in sync, so you can keep track of the number of contacts. So that's the pricing and how it works with the partnership that we have, the special partnership that we have for Nimble customers. Now, a small reminder that I want to share with you is how to get started. So how do I prepare my contacts to start these syncings? So we've asked you at the beginning of this webinar, where are your contacts? Now, I would suggest that you create an inventory of the apps that you're using, especially the apps that store contacts. Now, if you're working in a team, if you have some colleagues, go ahead and start that conversation with your colleagues. You never know, they might be using an app that you're not aware of that also stores some kind of contact data that could be important. So go ahead, have that conversation with your colleagues, or if you're a one-person business, think about all the places where your contacts are stored and create a list of that, and then see and try to bring it all together within Nimble and keeping it in sync with PieSync. That way, no matter where you're using or looking at your contact, the information will be correct. So that's like 3 steps to go over this. And then once you've done this, you just start doing what Frans just shared with us in your Nimble account, linking all these apps and making sure that your contacts are being kept in sync. Now, then there's the contact us. Yayas, I think you were still working on that slide.
May want to refresh the page, perhaps?
I just refreshed the page. It was updated
Mhm.
while you were presenting.
Yeah, and oops, sorry for that. There we go. Sorry for that. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can visit the Nimble website, contact us, or send an email to care@Nimble. And for questions about PieSync, we have our brand new help center that contains a lot of information and where you can contact us as well. So with that being said, Yayas,
Yep.
do we have any questions coming in?
Oh yeah, we definitely have a couple of questions here. And Franz, I can either ask these questions to you, or you can just look at the questions and answer them yourself, whatever you prefer.
Actually, I'll first start with piggybacking on the last slide that Sarah just showed. Our help center has a lot of information. Actually, a lot of the information that I've got a question here. I'm afraid I didn't catch the name, but one question is, how do I find out more what an integration can do before connecting them together? Which is an excellent question, and it is one where we have all possible field mappings as well as the possible rules. We have those spelled out on the help center of PieSync. So if you're not sure if that one app will contain this or that field in the field mapping, you can find that out on our knowledge base. And sometimes we may have not thought of a field, reach out. We can always look into what we can expand on. The other question,
I can share my screen just so that people can keep track with what's going on.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So the first question we have is this one.
So with Gmail, does every contact have to sync? Can somehow filter out to spam? It's Jamie asks a good question where in Google Contacts, you've got this other contacts folder, which automatically fills up with lots of spammy addresses over time. The rule in PieSync will actually tell whether it's going to include it or not. I think by default right now it does include it, but you can exclude it. So you can define to only sync as one certain group. Or one thing that I like to do is the rule that I've set up in Zendesk, right? Only sync out of Google Contacts if it actually finds a match in Nimble. So you're allowing PieSync to sync two-way, but it's Nimble who's going to be the director of the sync. So contacts need to exist in Nimble before they sync in two-way.
Franz, I have a question in regards to selective contact sync. So as you just shared, G Suite and Gmail automatically create a contact in Google Contacts for every email that you receive or send. Is that correct?
It's an option, which is checked by default. So most people do have it checked by default. Yeah.
Okay. And then you could sync all of those or selected ones. Is there an option in Gmail or G Suite that you can select based off of, did I communicate more than one time? Like, is there other details in the record? I guess you could say if there's a name or an address or some other field exists, but does Google Contacts yet have a last contacted or recency or frequency of contact field?
No, it does. It has a creation timestamp, but it doesn't have a usage timestamp. I'm afraid.
Okay,
that's
be handy.
You use Nimble, right?
Yeah. And then the other question is in Office 365, is there an option to automatically create records like it does in Gmail G Suite?
Not that I found, but that is what I believe is why you would again use the Nimble Outlook plugin.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Those are my questions.
How does it work with a master contact list in Mailchimp? Will it autofill into groups and segments? So I'm not sure if I'm capturing the complete nuance of Jamie's question. Will it autofill? It will not autofill, right? It's because basically we've not yet found it very comfortable to make decisions, segmentation decisions on your part, because we're not always sure whether the groups or the tags or however you're segmenting, whether that should translate one-to-one into a Nimble universe. So the rules give you that possibility.
Yeah, that's the way I answered that question for him in the background. And essentially what I think what he's saying is, if I add contacts to Nimble, let's say I capture leads from my website and I put them in Nimble or whatever, I prospect somebody, do I want to be able to selectively put them on certain drip lists in Mailchimp? And the way that I would suggest doing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Franz, is that you could, based off fields or tags in Nimble, put people on selected groups or segments in Mailchimp, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think I demoed only one rule, but that was
Yeah.
to keep it simple, right? The idea is to use plenty of rules, and the where you would have multiple segments in Mailchimp corresponding to multiple tags in Nimble, so you can like put people onto multiple segments or just remove them. It's about remote controlling Mailchimp from within Nimble, and it could be from within the Nimble contacts bar even.
So Franz, this sort of brings up a question that I would ask as a administrator or user of Nimble and PieSync and maybe Mailchimps and Xero and QuickBooks, is it's easy to get lost in the rules you set up and the contacts that are syncing. And is there sort of a FAQ or a blog post that digs in a little deeper into recommendations on how to keep it organized so it doesn't get too crazy?
We did make a fair amount of help pages as well as blog posts where we take Nimble as a reference app and sync it up with, and again, I'm using Mailchimp as an example, but it's important to know that it's about understanding PieSync's logic of rules and the mappings, and then you can transpose that to any app. So if you go on our help center and you type in Nimble, you'll actually find a couple of articles that will give you plenty of examples.
Perfect, thank you.
Sarah, maybe you want to tackle the question on seamless.io?
Sorry.
Do you know if PieSync? It says, do you know if PieSync is working on an interface to seamless.io? It's not an app that we have yet. So what should people do?
No, we don't have it yet. So maybe a short explanation on how it works. We get a lot of requests for adding apps, and we investigate. That means we are checking if they have an open API, if we can build on that. And also, if that's not the case or the API is missing endpoints for us, we start a conversation with these apps to ask them to open up their API. And then once that's all done, we can build on top of these apps. So people who have been with us for the past few years know that we're growing immensely with our number of apps. We're over 230 apps available right now. And currently at our website, if you have an app that we are not supporting yet, you can vote for that app or shoot us an email and say like, hey, I couldn't find this app on your website, on your offering, and we take it into account. If you vote for an app, the moment we build it and we release it, you get an update that your app is added to our offerings. So that's how we go about and checking new apps to be added.
And to piggyback on that, there's a question from Peter Savage on what's the requirements for those apps to be able to be compatible with PieSync, right? So there indeed needs to be an API.
A contacts entity.
Yeah, it needs to have a contacts entity. The API also needs to perform in a certain technical way. We have a requirements doc. If you happen to be developing a SaaS app, and you actually want to be connected to Nimble, you can reach out to us. This is how PieSync develops. It's before there is a connector for PieSync, there is a conversation with that other SaaS partner around making sure that our APIs line up. It's actually digging a tunnel, right, from both sides. So there is a fair amount of development that goes into each connector. We found ways to scale up really fast, but it's still a development effort from our end as well as from the partner's end. So if you're interested, we do have go to python.com/partner and we can start a conversation there.
Yes.
I think Sarah, you covered the question on how many contacts can we sync for free, which is 2,000, but really it's if you want to just sync them at ad hoc, there is really no limit, right? It's about keeping 2,000 contacts in a continuous selective sync. We covered the knowledge base. Oh, go ahead.
And I'd like to interject on that. I really think it's a good idea to, in your first 2 weeks while you're in the open period, is to do an inventory of all your contacts and use PieSync to unify them into a singular place, because ultimately it's good to have a unified contact database and then decide which ones you do want to keep in sync. And for those of you that it will fit 2,000, then you could stay under the free limit. But if it's going to become part of your key business cycle where you're managing the flow of contacts in your business, then it makes sense to become a subscriber to PieSync and to pay for more contacts. But while you have the free 2-week period, I'd recommend pulling all your contacts into a singular place so that you could have a singular source of truth. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The audit trail, last question for Peter there. Is there an audit trail for synchronization? So if a record has incorrect data, is it possible to check back where that data come from? We do offer the ability to check within PieSync. It's called health, to show the health of your sync. We can tell you whether a contact has been touched or when it's been last touched by PieSync. I must admit, you're not going to find a detailed audit log per contact for each individual change. It would be a lot of changes, to be perfectly honest. So we're not really almost comfortable storing all of that information at our end. We actually try to keep storing contact information to a minimum on PieSync's servers. We actually only store the links of the contacts. But if we actually hope that you don't even have to get to a stage where you have to go in and debug a faulty sync. And if you do, we actually do have support on the free tier as well as on the pay tier. You can jump on a conversation with us and we'll figure that out.
Franz, I'm not sure if you covered this, but is there a rollback option in PieSync? So let's say that I do a segment and I select some fields or tags and I basically move 500 contacts from Mailchimp to Nimble and I go, oops, didn't mean that. Is there a rollback?
There is no rollback that you can control within PieSync unless you actually just invert the rules, right? You can always set up a rule in the opposite sense, and then it should, if at least the data is still there, you would be able to roll it back by using PieSync. If you're actually setting up rules in a way that it's going to be overwriting information, we do not give you the ability within the PieSync user interface to roll it back. So there is a warning screen that comes in before you actually start that sync. To keep in mind, I mean, PieSync's powerful stuff, right? The same way that if you import a nasty CSV in Nimble, it may also override some contacts.
For sure. Okay, thank you.
No worries.
So I think that was the last question. If anybody has any additional questions, please, now is the time. And with that, Sarah and Franz, do you guys have any last minute call to actions that you'd like to share with the audience?
No, I would just advise them, like, have a look into your stack, check what you're working with, check where your contacts are, because contacts are like the most valuable asset in your business, and you want to keep talking to the right people at the right time. And like you said, John, we need to have clean contact data and make sure that they're in Nimble, that you have them there. And if you have any questions, go to our help center, shoot us an email, chat with us, and we're here to help out.
Sarah, would you say that your contacts are your gold mine?
Yes. Yes, that's perfectly put. Yeah.
And that PieSync helps you turn your contacts into gold?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then you want to be more nimble with your contacts.
Yes. Oh my God, this is going all nicely together.
So I'll leave you with a little vision there was a beer brewery in I think it was in Brussels that that I visited with my wife, and they make beer the old-fashioned way. It's a vertical, basically via gravity. So on the top of the building, it's a multi-story building. You go on this tour, and that's where they sort of boil the wort, etc. It's a copper little bath at the very top in the attic, and then they let the wort, cool and then go down, cool with the air, and then it goes down by gravity to the next level, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a beer that began with A, like Affleck, Ethel, I forget the name.
Affligem?
Yes, Affligem. Is that a brewery in Brussels?
It is.
Yeah.
It's near Brussels.
Yeah.
Well remembered.
Yeah, and it was just such a great experience. I'm looking forward to the day when you allow Americans back into Europe.
We actually like onboarded a couple of US colleagues as of late, and it really, like, typically we would have them over as soon as possible to train, but it really pains our heart that we can't have them over. Just
Yeah.
We're in the bad boy club. With that, I'd like to thank the PieSync team for inspiring and educating our shared audience. I'd like to thank the Nimble team, Yadis, etc., for hosting and managing the webinar. And finally, I'd like to thank everybody who attended today. I know that time is valuable. Hopefully you found this valuable to you. We will be sharing a recording of the video to all attendees. And with that, au revoir. Have an amazing rest of your day.
stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Stay safe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.